Friend saved me from his predator dad. Hi Reddit, this is my first time posting, so please forgive me if my formatting is weird. This happened about a long time ago now, but I still think about it and how grateful I am that it went the way it did. So I wanted to share, during my senior year of high school, I hung out with my friend Ellie and her BF Gabe, fake names, a lot throughout the semester. Ellie and I co-directed a school play, and all three of us performed a song for our choir concert. One night after a rehearsal, I got a rather cryptic message from Gabe that just said, "Hey, do you think you, your mom, and I could get lunch together soon? It's important." Now, I have anxiety, so this really freaked me out. I called Ellie to see if she knew anything about it that she could share with me, and all she said was, "It's not really something I can talk about. You really should meet with him though." So I message him back, agreeing to meet a few days later. It's important to note that this meeting happened maybe 2 weeks after my 18th birthday. So my mom and I meet with him, and after a decent amount of small talk, my mom finally asks, "Okay, Gabe, what's this about?" Gabe then goes on to tell us how his adoptive dad, a man in at least his 70s at the time, was getting involved in some form of Native American voodoo, as Gabe put it, that used potions and spells. The shoe dropped, however, when Gabe said, "I had a really bad feeling after seeing how my dad was staring at you the other day at a rehearsal. So I snuck into his room and found a picture under his pillow next to a love potion spell. It was two-sided. One picture was of you, OP, and had the words, 'I love you.' The other side was a picture of him, Gabe's dad, with the words, 'You will love me.' Y'all, I can still remember the feeling in my stomach when I heard that. Both my mom and I sat there shell-shocked. Poor Gabe didn't know how to proceed other than to say, 'I needed to tell you because I don't trust him. I will make sure you are never alone with him.' And Gabe stuck to that promise, he and Ellie both, and my mom. They all made sure I was never alone in the same space as that man, and I am so grateful for that. From that point on, whenever I saw Gabe's dad, I had a panic attack until I graduated, and thankfully never saw him again after that. Gabe and Ellie are now happily married with children that I'm hoping don't see that grandparent. And I am safe, alive, and well, all thanks to Gabe's goodwill." Let's dive into the comment. "That was so brave of him to reach out to you and your mom. Many people wouldn't do it, thinking they won't be taken seriously. Also, kudos to you, your mom and the friend, for believing him and taking all the possible precautions. What a freaking nightmare." The second story. Strange encounter at a park. This happened when I was 19 years old, female, and every now and then I still think about. It was summertime and I was living in this city up by where I went to uni. It had been a nice day, so I decided to go and hang out at a nearby park and enjoy the sun. I ended up driving there, parked my car, and headed to a coffee shop across the street for an iced coffee, which sounded nice at the time. Then I headed back to the park and sat down on the grass and was people watching and lightly scrolling on my phone. It was a pretty big and popular park in the area, so it was ways relatively busy with plenty of things going around. At some point I had gotten pulled into my phone a bit too much, but something made me look up and to my right. A ways off from me was a group of guys speaking some other language. It wasn't one I could recognize, so I have no clue what it was. There were 4 of them that I noticed. I honestly don't know why I even looked up. It was pretty busy, so my brain filtered out most people around. But I did. I shrugged it off and went back to scrolling. A few minutes later, the group had walked directly in front of me, and one of the guys had peeled off and sat down next to me. I happened to notice the guys walk to the EU parking lot, and they were all waiting by this one car. I figured they were just waiting for this one guy to maybe have a quick chat for a minute and then leave. 19-year-old me had the survival strategy of a golden retriever. If someone talked to me, I would be painfully polite, even if I had alarm bells ringing. He sat down and told me I was pretty and asked what I was doing out at the park. I awkwardly laughed and thanked him and just explained that I was enjoying the nice weather. It was unbearably hot for once. I don't remember if it was then that I mentioned I was waiting to meet up with a friend, which was a lie. Something just made me feel the need to say it. The interaction was so painfully awkward, I figured it would honestly end there. and the answers I gave were relatively short. It did not. He started going off on how he was from California since it was so expensive there, and was visiting to see if he maybe wanted to move to my state, but how everything seemed expensive here also. I agreed because, well, rent was expensive, especially for a college student. He then asked where I lived. I remember the question kind of took me off guard. I kept it vague and told him by the university. The conversation kept going, and every couple minutes I remember he'd sprinkle in a compliment. We'd be talking about apartments, then he'd randomly go, "You have pretty eyes." And I'd awkwardly laugh it off and he'd go back to apartments. It definitely felt odd. The conversation continued and he asked me if I needed a roommate. I immediately shut that down and told him I had roommates already and wasn't looking for any more. He asked if I knew any good places to rent. I told him no, and that I wasn't the best person to ask. By this point, I was over the conversation with my dry and short responses, and he decided to pivot into a completely new direction and unlocked a new line of dialogue. He asked if I wanted to go for a drive with him. I declined and said that I was waiting for someone. He said it would be quick, and he just wanted to go to some weed shop nearby that his friend owned. I declined again. I glanced back to the parking lot and the car, and his friends were still there. Yeah, hell no. I told him I didn't know him and didn't feel comfortable getting into a car with a stranger who I had just met. Now he was pushy. We had gone in circles a couple times. Then he added in a new element. He said that him had some weed and coke in the car and we could go and have some fun. I genuinely don't know why he thought this would help his case. I told him I did not do and had no intention of doing drugs. He laughed it off, and the next words completely baffled me. He said he would pay me money to go with him. At that point, it had turned into a negotiation, I guess. I told him no, and instead of accepting it and leaving, he asked me how much money it would take for me to go with him. I told him none. I remember he threw out some wild number like 2 or 3 grand, and I declined again. After what felt like ages and him exhausting every possibly avenue, he smiled and told me I was pretty, and thanked me for talking to him before he got up and left. I watched as him and his friend all got into the car and left. This day, though, I still think about that interaction and wonder what my life would have been affected if I had gone with him and hadn't been paying attention. Let's dive into the comments. Jesus, every woman should get in the habit of taking pics of any guy that corners them in this way. The user reply, yeah, I should have. I was a bit afraid of causing a scene back then, and I'm not known for being discreet enough to sneakily take one. He replied back with, there's absolutely nothing wrong with causing a scene if you have to. Luckily, you don't have a problem with that anymore, which you had every right to do at the time, given that this creepy dude kept trying to push himself on you. Women need to learn to let go of that don't cause a scene attitude, which has been ingrained in some of us since birth, and learn to make a scene whenever a creep tries to push himself or herself on any of us. Period.